Across Russia, we are seeing the foundations begin to crack. Moscow itself is beginning to shake because across the country we see that the budget shortfalls are rapidly increasing. The arrest of senior leaders is not slowing down, and all the while, the wait for gas, the fuel lines, they are growing in length. Ultimately, when the palace runs short of cash, we will see slowdowns across the country, but we will also see losses on the front. This is why today, inside of the Kremlin, we are seeing a decisive struggle, a battle as to what the future of Russia will be. And at this point, it appears that Vladimir Putin is losing that battle. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kiev Post. I also happen to be a national security advisor who specifically studies Russia and the Putin regime. And what's interesting about what's going on inside of Russia is that the situation is bad, and we all can see it. This is not theory. This is not a guess. This is what the news is reporting. Remember back in May 2024 when Putin removed Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu? He installed another man, Andrei Belousov. Now, what's interesting about that is simply that Belousov is not a soldier. He is an economist. So why did he replace him? What does that actually mean? Well, Belousov is there to be an accountant, to see where all the money has gone. And sure enough, he's uncovered a lot of corruption. Because we see the number of generals being arrested today is breaking records. The people at the level of colonel are being arrested in droves. There are problems across Russia's military. And that's part of the reason that Russia continues to lose on the front. Russia just wrapped up its summer offensive, and it lost over 110,000 soldiers who were casualties. That's a phenomenal loss. But that's just one part of the problem. Everywhere else we look inside of Russia, the numbers are not very promising. Consider this. In December 2024, they projected that the 2025 budget would have a shortfall of about $15 billion. But by September, it has already reached $54 billion. They projected 15, but so far in the year, it's already 54. So there's still time for that very easily to surpass 4 times more than what they had estimated. That's not very good for them because they need money. Wars are expensive things, as are maintaining countries. So they've sort of given up on maintaining the country, and they're doing their best to somehow figure out how they can get more money. From whom can they shake down for a little bit more money to pay for this very expensive war, which the Kremlin cannot afford? The problem is this. There is no easy answer. Right now, they're proposing a 25% corporate profit tax to be put on all the companies of Russia. This is while more than half of Russia's companies say that they are struggling to meet payroll. They already are struggling to pay taxes. Increasing their taxes will not make the situation better for them. So you might think, why don't they get loans? Well, they're not getting loans for a very simple reason. The interest rates in Russia are extremely high, over 20% typically for banks if you wish to get a loan. But there's something else. The banks themselves don't have enough cash. That's because the national government has forced them to give out loans to the military-industrial complex. The problem with that, though, is that the military-industrial complex doesn't repay its loans. It takes the money, it builds what it's supposed to build, or just embezzles it, but the bank doesn't get its cash back. And when the bank doesn't get its cash back, the bank becomes more insolvent. We are seeing that the credit lines across Russia are tightening. We see that there is less and less transactions occurring. More and more people are sure that there is going to be economic chaos in the country. But there's something else going on. The government is trying to find a solution, and they are proposing E-Rubles. Now, we've talked about E-Rubles before, but inherently, when the government wants to give you electronic money, something that you can't touch, the people are very rightfully fearful of what that means. They realize this sounds a lot like monopoly money. But there's something else that is worsening the situation for the government. It's not just that their banks are becoming insolvent, or the fact that they can't pay their military, or they can't pay the military-industrial complex. It's the fact that Ukrainian strikes are damaging multiple refineries across Russia. About a quarter of Russia's output now has been cut off. Well, aside from banning now the export of gasoline, there is not enough gas in Russia. Even in Moscow and St. Petersburg, there are queues of hours in order to get gasoline. This is a serious problem. This is also driving up cost. So, what can the government do? It's out of money and it's out of ways to make more money. Well, some inside the Kremlin's leadership understand that this is a risk. They understand that Vladimir Putin himself does not want to end this war. He's been quite insistent that he wishes to achieve his initial goal, the full takeover of Ukraine, to totally, en masse, occupy the nation. Now, of course, this is totally irrational. This makes no sense. Obviously, if Russia just went through this summer and it promised a huge offensive, but it gained less than 1% of Ukraine's territory, with the cost of over 100,000 soldiers being casualtied, what hope is there to take all of Russia? If today Russia is being forced to cannibalize its vehicles for the spare parts in order to keep its military rolling, how could it possibly hope to continue fighting this war? It realistically cannot. But Vladimir Putin doesn't want to hear that. And that's why we're seeing the arrest increase. And that's why we are seeing today what really is a pretty strong sign that there might be serious fundamental problems in Russia that are coming to a head. Take a look at this. Over the past few months, we've seen a shocking increase in the number of Russians who allegedly committed suicide. As you know, it's quite famous that they go out of windows or they choose to do things like hang themselves with their hands tied behind their back. Now, that does usually seem improbable, but in Russia, it's always possible. Why is this happening now? What is going on that just in the past few weeks, there's been such an alarming increase? That comes back to the economy. Again, the economy is one of the most important things here. When you realize that the nation is short up on cash, and you realize who is leading the country, it all makes a lot more sense. The people leading Russia today are not interested in what is good for Russia. They never chose to go into government service because they were worried about the future of their nation. They went into government service to fleece the nation, to rob their fellow countrymen. And there are factions such as the technocrats. The technocrats are the people that have no strong political view. They're there just to fulfill a function. People like the head of the finance or the people that head of the central bank. They're technical workers. But there's others, such as the propagandists. The propagandists, of course, want to say everything is well and that they are continuing. But the real power in the Kremlin isn't with either one of those. The real power is with those who have the weapons. Quite logically, the more weapons you have, the more power you have, especially in a system such as Moscow's. And this is why, increasingly, I think people who study Russia would argue there are signs that things are unraveling. Because those people being fired today, people being moved aside, generals who are just simply not been heard of recently, that is strange. That historically does not happen in post-Soviet Russia. Now, of course, it has happened historically. It happened a lot with Joseph Stalin. But Stalin died on March 5th, 1952. It's been a long, long time. But why is it happening now? Well, it appears that there is serious concern that different elements within the Kremlin might already be making plans of what to do if Putin will not end this war. What to do if Putin will lose this war. The numbers are seriously that bad today for Russia. The people, it appears, are already trying to plan what comes next, what they should do, how they should operate to preserve their own security, to preserve their future. Because once Putin falls or dies, what's going to happen is, of course, not for certain, but history would indicate there's a very good chance there'll be significant fighting in Moscow. We will expect to see different groups of the oligarchy, different groups of those coming from the security sector, attempting to liquidate their rivals. And when they liquidate their rivals, they will not just get rid of them and their families, they will take all of their assets. Because ultimately, that is what drives them. If we wish to understand the Kremlin and what drives the people who work there, it's that simple. It is about personal wealth. It is about consolidating power to make sure that nobody else can take your personal wealth. And that is all that there is. There's truly nothing else. So look at these different signs. Look at the fact that Vladimir Putin, his recent behavior, it is quite a bit different than what it was before. In all the decades that I have followed Putin, I don't recall him ever behaving like this. He looks very concerned. He looks irritated. And he's saying things as if he is not speaking to the audience before which he appears, but speaking to other people in the leadership of Russia, guaranteeing that no matter what, the country will continue the war. Even on questions he's asked that are totally unrelated, he likes to make that point. But why does he do it? Well, it seems likely that he's getting pressure. The people inside the Kremlin are saying, look, you had a very good chance to end this war. The Americans, under President Trump, were willing to cut you a deal that you thought would be reasonable. But you declined it. You refused to even negotiate. And now you're trying to provoke Europe and NATO. This is not going to work out well for us. If we weren't able to defeat Ukraine, how are we going to possibly get entangled in a war with NATO now? But that is part of the reason that Vladimir Putin now is at risk. Because history shows us, Russian history shows us, that czars, like the dictators of the Soviet Union, appear to have all the power in the world. They appear to have everything concentrated in their hands. However, Putin is no different than his predecessors. There is very often in Russian history conspiracies, as well as coups, as well as murders. So whether or not Vladimir Putin thinks that he can do what he wants and not end the war, perhaps he believes that he has the strength. But that means he's counting on a military which realizes it's being persecuted by his allies from the FSB. A military that realizes that it is going to all end up in handcuffs together and be sent off to die needlessly in the fronts of Ukraine. There are things going on right now inside of Russia that are becoming increasingly tense, increasingly complicated. The financial situation is a disaster. The society does not have gasoline. They are now having shortages across the country of multiple goods. We look at the situation with the population as a whole, and we see that they're concerned because we can see what they're searching for on the internet. There are significant problems inside of Russia, and if you try to find good news, you will not find it. Because today, the news has become so stark, so bad, so alarming, that it's not really a question anymore as to whether or not the Kremlin can continue. It's more a question of how long until the Kremlin finally gives in, until the Kremlin finally watches over the collapse of modern Russia, which is why undoubtedly there are people around Putin today realizing that he provides nothing more than a risk. He is not someone who's providing them a better future. He is a problem. Pay attention to the firings. If you see firings going on at the most senior levels of Russia, if you see more arrest at the ministerial level or deputy ministerial level, that is a sign that things are coming. Likewise, if you see more generals stop showing up for parades and starting to disappear, more oligarchs fleeing the country, these are all signs that something is going on inside the Kremlin. And the best part, we have seen all of those things the past few days. The crisis in Moscow is continuing, and it will get worse. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, please subscribe to this channel, and consider becoming a channel member today. And please do check out in the first comment below, which I'll pin, how you can donate for drones to help protect the lives of Ukraine's soldiers. As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do
so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it.